Hi, welcome to this episode of The Daily. My name is Brendan Malone. Well, there's been this viral social media video that's been plucked out of the Australian media and has been passed around like hotcakes on Facebook and Twitter and other things in the last couple of days. It's from a show called The Project, and there's a journalist on that show called Waleed Aly, and he engages in a piece of editorialising that goes for about 5 minutes, where he's responding to a comment that one of his fellow Australian journalists, Sonia Kruger, made about the threat of Islamic fundamentalism, so the threat of Islamic violence. And she suggested that, in a very calm and reasoned way, by the way, on her show, that maybe it could be a good idea to close the border, the Australian border, to Muslim immigration because of the threat of Islamic fundamentalism. Now, I don't agree with what she said, but it was very reasoned the way she said it. She's put forward a proposition, and I think the proper response is to actually engage with her and with the idea and to point out what you think is wrong with it if you disagree. Instead, what Waleed Aly has done, and I'll post a link below so you can actually check out the original video content that he made for yourself. Instead, what he's done is he has effectively produced what I think is a completely hypocritical and irrational video response, which sounds nice, but is actually extremely dangerous. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, it's extremely hypocritical what he's saying. So he says, well, look, that this is all nothing more than being motivated by fear, and that we should actually stop attacking other people, and instead of engaging in what we call destructive behaviours, we should engage in making forgiveness go viral and understanding and being reasoned and rational in our response to people who say things we disagree with. The problem is, though, it's hypocritical because he actually starts his video by suggesting that she is mentally unstable, that it is some sort of irrational fear that's motivated her and has caused her to say this. And he also compares her statement to someone being on a gravitron, one of those rides that spins round and round, and then vomiting on the gravitron. And he literally says, he compares that directly to what she said. In other words, she spewed forth some sort of hate out of her mouth. Now, not only is that irrational, because that's not what she actually did, it's also completely hypocritical because he's doing exactly what he's claiming not to do. At another point in the video, he says, I could say this, and this in response. And each of those points he makes, by the way, is a bit of a red herring and can be easily refuted, but that's irrelevant. The point is, he then turns around and says, but I'm not going to do that, as if he's somehow being a better person. But you just did all that. So if you're not going to do it, why did you just do it? That's like someone grabbing you and saying, look, here, and stabbing you 3 times in the chest and then saying, I could stab you 3 times in the chest, but I'm not going to do that. Yeah, but you just did all that. So it's a bit absurd and redundant, and it's completely hypocritical and irrational to then turn around and claim like you're taking the high moral ground and you're not doing something that you've clearly just done. The biggest problem, though, really with Waleed Aly's video and what he's proposing here is that it's extremely dangerous because what he wants us to do is he wants us to condescend Sonia Kruger, and not just Sonia, but anyone who disagrees with us. No, that is not how you end up with a just, stable civil order, with a strong community where people are connected to each other. That only happens when you actually listen to people and treat them as people, not as some sort of mentally irrational person just because they say things you disagree with. And that's the big problem here. He wants to treat her statement as hateful right from the get-go, even though it wasn't. He wants to treat her as some kind of bigot, as some kind of person who is mentally unstable because of the fear that they are experiencing. I'm sorry, but that is not how you build strong, stable, loving communities and societies. What you've actually got to do is treat people like human persons, listen to the ideas that they are actually putting forward and engage with them and their ideas, not condescend them arrogantly by suggesting that they are motivated by nothing more than a delusional fear. In fact, while we're on it, it's really irrelevant what motivates a lot of these statements. It is, now motivation can matter, but in this case, he's made far too much out of it. If someone comes into your house at 2 a.m. in the morning and is shaking like a ghost and can barely get the words out because they're so scared and they say, there's a fire in your front bedroom, you need to grab a fire extinguisher and put it out, your first thought shouldn't be, I wonder what motivated you to say that. Oh, it's fear, is it? Well, let me forgive you. That is not how you address that situation. That's not a rational response to what is a very real threat. Instead, your first thought should be, okay, there's a fire, I better grab the extinguisher and see whether or not this is true. That's what your first thought should be. But what Waleed Aly wants you to do is to not grab the extinguisher, to not even figure out whether or not this is true or not, and how you should even begin to rationally respond to these situations. And the problem is that by doing what he proposes, you are actually going to create a fertile breeding ground for extremism. He says he's afraid of extremism, but his very proposal will breed more of it. That's why in countries, particularly in Europe, you are seeing the rise of far-right parties again. Why? Because people know there's a problem. Islamic violence is now a problem that is happening almost weekly, if not weekly, around the globe. Every week now, almost every week, innocent people are being killed by violent Islamic fundamentalists. To pretend this isn't a problem, that we shouldn't be concerned about this, and that we don't actually need to respond to this is actually quite absurd, and most people know that. So when you try and do what Waleed Aly is doing and shut them down, shut down the dialogue, treat them like bigots or lunatics for saying things that you disagree with, that's the only caveat. Oh, they're a lunatic, or they're driven by fear, or they're a bigot, or they're hateful because they're saying things I disagree with. And when you do that to people, guess what happens? They get fed up, they get frustrated, they see the lack of leadership, they see the problem, and then they start becoming really fearful, and they start gravitating towards extreme options because they think that's the only place they're going to get heard, and that's the only way these problems are going to be fixed. So if you actually do want to build a just, stable civil order and communities where people care and love for each other and actually have concern for each other, and where forgiveness is actually promoted, which I do, by the way, then you've got to start by listening to people. Don't follow Waleed Aly's suggestions for how you fix this problem. It's hypocritical, B, it's irrational, and it's condescending. And it will only make the situation worse. You've actually got to stop treating people like idiots and stop treating people like they're bigots and hateful just because they disagree with you. And you need to start listening to them, and then you need to start reasoning if you disagree with them. You need to put forward your own logical propositions and evidence for why you think they're wrong. When societies do that, good things flourish. When they shut down the debate and people are treated like irrational lunatics just for disagreeing, or like hateful bigots, then you get exactly more of the very problems that Waleed Aly claims he's trying to solve. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily.